Welcome to Prescribed by Dr. Nathan Goodyear, where integrative oncology meets holistic healing. This podcast is your home for the latest in innovation, exploration, and elevation in all areas of integrative oncology, medicine, health, wellness, and beyond. Join me and a host of other innovators as we go from practicing to prescribing. Your daily dose of wellness begins now. Hope, heal, teach, truth, trust, serve, legacy. I'm Dr. Nathan Goodyear. This is the Prescribed by Dr. Nathan Goodyear podcast. You know, I talk about those words a lot. That word prescribe, what it means to write down, to write before, to determine in advance, to ordain, to appoint. See, I believe that being a physician is one of the highest honors, one of the highest callings. I believe for me, it was written down before time began. It was determined in advance. It was ordained and it was appointed that I be a physician. And today I have the pleasure of bringing on somebody that also, likewise, was written down before. I believe was ordained and appointed. And I believe he has a unique perspective and unique experience to share with you. And I think can provide some insight and hopefully some direction of how we can re-steer this train that has gone off track, that is medicine, and bring it back to its original purpose. And I think it's his story, his journey, and really his purpose in life right now that I think can help us to do that. So let me introduce you to our guest and we'll jump right in. So this is Dr. Jeffrey Barke, a board-certified family physician. He's an author, speaker, and host of a couple different podcasts. I'll let him share those. He spent 3 decades actually caring for patients in the state of California, if I believe still correctly. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm still here. They haven't kicked me out yet.
Wow. Or you haven't left. I mean, and I'm glad you have stayed there because we need that. But you moved into that concierge medical practice and you really focused on personalized medicine and preventative medicine, but advocating and going back to some of, your older content, it's medical freedom, patient responsibility. And really, as of late, you're adding in very, I think, intimately the faith-centered living as aspect to all of that. Obviously, you made it known you're a committed Christian, and you discuss the intersection of faith, purpose, and health. Jeff, thank you, and welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, Dr. Goodyear, it's an honor to be on your show. I've followed you for a long time, and when your daughter reached out to have me come on your show, I was blown away. I don't really look at myself as doing anything special. The ultimate healer, the ultimate physician is God himself, not me, not you, not anybody. And I think we've gotten it all wrong. Now, I was trained as a traditional physician in Western medicine my whole career. I've been doing this for 30 plus years. I went to medical school at the University of California, Irvine, right here in Orange County. Graduated in 1990, followed by a family practice residency. And it was really COVID that woke me up and really just, kicked me in the rear end to say much of what I was doing in healthcare was incorrect. Much of what I was taught in medical school simply just wasn't so. I was never taught about nutrition. I was taught that vaccines are safe and effective and that there is no relationship between vaccines and chronic illness or autism. I was taught that cardiovascular disease was caused by cholesterol. And if we aggressively lower cholesterol, we will prevent cardiovascular disease. Yet, I just read this the other day, there are 900 million prescriptions of statins every single year in the United States. It's the number 1 prescribed drug in the entire world. Yet we haven't moved the needle on cardiovascular disease. So there's something that's not quite right. And there's something not quite right throughout medicine. So I've shifted a lot over the last 5-8 years in my practice and my belief system. Now, you don't know this, and most of my patients and audience don't. I share little pieces of it maybe I should share more. I grew up as a Jew and was bar mitzvahed as a kid at age 13. And it was only later in life that I became a Christian. I started reading books. I had pastor friends and others that planted little seeds. And I came to the conclusion after reading many books, including probably one of the most influential ones, and that's by Lee Strobel, A Case for Christ.
I love that book. I love that book.
As well as C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity, that I woke up one day and just said, I think he was who he said he was. I called a dear friend of mine who lived in Texas, who grew up as a Jew and became a Christian as well, who actually gave me the book, Case for Christ. His name is Mark. Said, Mark, I think Jesus was who he said he was. Like, I don't know what to do with that information. I'm waiting for a special message from the TV for the clouds to part, for like a Southern Baptist church where you start writhing on the ground and the Holy Spirit enters you. Like, when is that going to happen?
I've not been to a Southern Baptist church that did that.
I don't know. He flew out and we drank a little too much and spent a lot of time talking. And he said, listen, if you believe that he was who he said he was, then welcome to the club. And it was really that moment that I started viewing myself through the lens of being a Christian. And then earlier this year, I attend Mariners Church in Irvine. Pastor Eric is so gifted in his ability to be humble and deliver a message and use humor. And such a good speaker that ultimately I got baptized at Mariners Church. Oh, this was, I think, right before Easter. And so this past year. And so I realized, I came to the conclusion that my role as a Christian, and really I think, I'm kind of new. I'm not biblically incredibly literate, but I do my best. That I believe that my role as a Christian is not just to go to church and read the Bible, although those things are important and I love doing those, or to listen to worship music. I love that too. But I have a bigger project in mind, I think, that God wants of all us Christians, and that is to spread his word and to teach people about his word. And that was a little scary to me because I have a growing social media presence and I love doing what I do. I love influencing people to take control of their own health, to teach them how to do that so they can disconnect from the traditional healthcare system. Studies show that the third leading cause of death is medical error, yet we keep doing the same thing over and over. So I believe my role in part was to bring people closer to Christ. And I didn't really know how to do that, but I've got this social media platform. So I decided to take a risk, and every Monday now I have a Monday faith message. And I wasn't sure how my audience was going to accept it. I was worried I was going to lose subscribers, and people would think, I'm not listening to you to learn about the word. I'm listening to you to learn about health. Well, I was wrong. A lot of people really enjoyed what I had to say, especially from a simplistic standpoint. God gave me many gifts, and one of which is to take very complicated things and to present them in a way that's understandable to the average person. I'm pretty good at doing that medically, and I think I'm also good at doing that biblically. So every Monday I try to share a faith message that's accessible to the average with some call to action items, things that they can do to get just a little bit closer to God, whether they're a believer or whether they're not a believer. And so when I see people like you doing what you're doing and others in our field, it inspires me to do more and to be better and to try to stay on that walk. And don't get me wrong, boy, I'm as fallen and as sinful as anybody. And I struggle with the same demons that everybody else struggles. I've hurt people in my life. I have regrets for many things that I've done. But I'm also very honored and I believe that ultimately God forgives us if we're willing to repent and to make efforts to do better. And that's what I try to do every day in my life, imperfectly, but that's what I try to do. So I'm lucky I'm now leading a life group at Mariners Church. I've got a group of men that are on the same walk, fallen, sinful men just like me. And it's really helpful and encouraging to me that I have other men in my life that are on a similar walk. We can keep each other accountable. We can commiserate and learn together. We can read the word together, and then try to share that word with as many people as we can.
You know, those people, that opening that I provided is, I've had a lot of people ask me, well, what drives you? What drives me, that is, as a physician? And for me, I've always said, well, you know, words like hope, heal, truth, trust, serve, legacy, etc. And, you know, when you look at those words, those 7 words, it's interesting that they're 7. They embody a person. They embody Jesus: hope, heal, teach, truth, trust, serve, legacy. And so for me, I think there's 2 people that will have to answer a lot for what they've done in this life when Judgment Day comes. One is pastors, because obviously they're leaders of the flock, but also I think doctors, because, you know, the Bible talks about the body being a temple. And you're exactly correct that when you talk about, you know, physical harm from medical therapies, it really makes you take a pause about what are we actually doing. And then you start to look and broadly look at what medicine is today, where it's migrated from. And, you know, the faith, purpose, and health, it's like the beautiful title of a book. But you kind of alluded to this, Jeff. Medicine's gone astray. Why do you think medicine has gone astray? Why do you think doctors have gone astray? And of course, I think the COVID pandemic, I think, is really front and center. I mean, I know Paul Merrick, I know Pierre Corey, you know, these people that stood up early on and basically shouted from the mountaintops and just absolutely vilified and destroyed because of it. And there's so many others that did so as well. But where have doctors and where has medicine lost its way? Is it as simple as forgetting who we serve? Is it simple as beginning why we should provide hope?
I think there's a lot of reasons, but I think the fundamental first principle reason is, I think it was C.K. Chesterton that said, and I'm paraphrasing, but something like, when people stop believing in God, they don't believe in nothing, they believe in everything. Mm-hmm. And so when this country has lost its Judeo-Christian roots, when we stop praying, when we stop allowing kids to learn about God and the Bible in public schools, we've lost our way, including physicians. Now, I don't think doctors wake up wanting to harm people. They don't. I mean, most doctors are good people and they do the best they can, but they just have learned things that aren't so. Medical schools now have become infiltrated with influences that aren't healthy. I don't think there's a medical school in the country that doesn't have a building that is sponsored and named by some pharmaceutical company. I remember when I was in medical school, it was a rare day where there wasn't a pharma-sponsored lunch that we would go to. And of course, as medical students and even residents, we love that. Free food. And all we have to do is listen. Usually, this has changed, but usually it's a beautiful woman who's a rep for a pharma company, because in the day, most medical students, residents were men. That's not the case anymore. But nonetheless, they would have our attention, and over and over and over again, we would hear messages from pharma. And we started to believe what we would hear. We would incorporate that into our practice, and then we would deliver that. You know, I saw this meme, and I did a post about this. Was something like, imagine that one commercial airlines crashed every single day and 600 people lost their lives. Every single day this would happen. Would you ever go to the airport and travel by air? Of course, the answer is, well, no. I would think the risk would be way too high if every day an airplane was crashing. But the equivalent number of people die or are killed accidentally because of what we do, we being physicians, hospitals, medical centers, emergency rooms, urgent care centers, third leading cause of death. And even if you think that number is exaggerated, and perhaps it is, so half it, what if it was the 10th leading cause of death? Medical error. Yet, like the commercial airline example, people keep going to the airport and traveling by air. We keep doing the same thing as far as medical care. We go to the same doctors, we go to the same hospitals, same emergency rooms, urgent care centers, etc. And sometimes we get harmed as a result of doing that. Now, I think in COVID, the silver lining to COVID, early on in COVID, I met Simone Gold, who started America's Frontline Doctors.
Right.
I was one of the first.
She's an MD-JD, right?
What's that?
She's an MD-JD, right?
She's an MD-JD. Yeah, she was in California and eventually moved to Florida. And so, I was one of the first physicians to sign on to this idea of America's Frontline Doctors. The purpose of this organization was to share the truth with as many people as we could, physicians alike. And we went to Washington, D.C. early in the pandemic. We had a press conference, and this was really the start of the medical cancel culture because all the media outlets canceled us. We had social media influencers that spread our word. Our messages went viral, but then YouTube and at the time Twitter, et cetera, just shut us down. They didn't want this information from physicians. And there were some pretty prominent physicians that were part of this group.
Yeah.
Including folks that work in HHS right now. Jay Bhattacharya, for example, was part of this group. And Joe Ladapo, who's a Surgeon General of Florida, he was one of us. Bhattacharya, of course, famously wrote the Great Barrington Declaration with his colleagues.
Yeah.
It was a simple opinion piece that said, during COVID, what we've noticed is that younger people are relatively immune to the virus. And it's the old folks that are really getting hit hard. So let's engineer that. Let's protect the old and allow the young to go about their business so people will get infected, fine, and then they'll become immune. Let's do that. And he was shut down. Anthony Fauci purposefully tried to squash what he and others were saying. And it was crazy. And then, of course, famously, I was driving to work when President Trump, during one of the COVID briefings, made mention of hydroxychloroquine. And I said, okay, what's the under over before I start getting phone calls from patients wanting hydroxychloroquine? And certainly it happened. And then after that, ivermectin. And then, of course, the CDC famously tweeted, I don't know what the CDC is doing with the Twitter account, but nonetheless, something about ivermectin being a horse dewormer and that people shouldn't take it.
Yeah, that was FDA approved for decades before.
Oh, I know. And now I know you deal with a lot of cancer.
Yeah. And
I know holistic oncologists that are using, and I do this too, because there's not enough of you to service all the people that need help. Ivermectin and mebendazole as alternatives, along with various nutraceuticals, with or without traditional therapy. Why are we not screaming this from the rooftops, that the only way to treat cancer is not chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery, that there are other ways to do this? Patients are not being given a choice. They're not being given informed consent about what's going on here. They have no idea that oncologists are allowed to profit off the chemotherapy that they deliver. I'm not saying I'm not anti-chemotherapy. There's a role for everything.
Correct.
But we need to partner with patients to educate them about treatment options and then be their partner in helping them make a good decision. And we're not doing that, unfortunately.
Jeff, I want to ask you a question because it's not directly tied into what you're saying, because I believe all of those, and heck, I could bring you back and we could really dive into that concept of what you just talked about, both the experience of the pandemic, what it's taught us, and how we can learn from it, and then how moving forward, how medicine can be better from that learning. But what I say about medicine is built in science. It's built on science. And I was actually on stage at a conference, and I was sitting next to a PhD doc, and she said, the doctors up here, the medical doctors up here are not scientists. I'm a scientist. They're just medical doctors. And I thought, well, I was baffled. I didn't
Yeah.
know what to say with that. And I think the look on my face, everybody in the audience knew it. I was like, what? So, but this patient, this individual was just a provocative person. They just wanted to say things that were provocative. But when medicine loses its founding, its feet in science, and the foundation of what science is to ask a question. It's to be observant, to be curious. So if we lose the ability to answer a question, ask a question and get an answer, which is the foundation of science, then can we really say at that point medicine is about truth or about science at all anymore? What is it?
Well, you're right. And here's the problem too, Dr. Goodyear, is the science is corrupt as hell. We don't share the science in a way that is understandable to many. Most of the research that's done in the United States is sponsored by big pharma. Now, the National Institutes of Health is funded in part by pharmaceutical companies. So you have pharmaceutical companies doing the research. You have paid consultants of pharma that are writing the papers that ultimately are published. You have the medical journals, all of them, whoever's listening, think about the most prestigious medical journals you can think of. New England Journal of Medicine, Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, Lancet out of Great Britain, and others. They are all funded in part by pharma. You can't flip through any of those medical journals without a full-page ad from some pharmaceutical company. So the pharma companies write the results of the research, they publish them into pharma-sponsored journals, then they present them to the public as if it's legit. And what I've taught myself to do, I don't know about you, but nobody, I shouldn't say nobody, most physicians have never read a package insert for a drug or a vaccination. Me included. I'd never read these things. And I had a medical assistant that came to work for me during COVID that pushed me to read vaccine inserts and package inserts. And I started doing that. And it's hard. If you read a package insert, it's very scientific-y. There's a lot of statistics in there. You have to really spend some time and learn how to do this. So I had to teach myself how to do this. So for example, I posted recently, and anybody that's listening, if you want to follow me, my social handle is RX4Liberty, RX4, FOR Liberty, website of the same name. And almost every Friday, I do an Informed Consent Friday. I take a drug package insert or vaccine package insert. I simply read from it and then summarize what the meaning of it is. So for example, I made reference earlier that the number one prescribed drug in the United States and the world are statin medications, over 900 million prescriptions written for statins. So I took a package insert from one of the most widely used statins. They're all the same, whether it's Crestor, Lipitor, or the generic versions of those. And part of what's required to be in the package insert is information about the studies that brought the product to market. There's a very famous study that was done many years ago called the Jupiter study that brought statins to the market. I'm like, okay, let me figure out what this Jupiter study is. And it was a pretty large study, 9,000 patients in the placebo group, 9,000 patients in the treatment group, and these patients were studied over 5 years. Now, what the drug companies do is they give you relative risk. They'll say, this drug reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease by 30%. You're like, oh, damn, 30%. That's a pretty good number. I want to be on that. But when you look at the absolute numbers or the numbers needed to treat. So, for example, the Jupiter study, one of the most famous studies done to look at statins. The Jupiter study, in the data, when you read the fine numbers, you have to treat 3,000 patients over 5 years to prevent one fatal heart attack. 3,000 patients over 5 years to prevent one fatal heart attack. Well, what about the other 2,999 patients? They don't get benefit, and we can't figure out who's going to get the benefit before we treat. Never mind that the side effects are pretty impressive with muscle aches and pains, etc. And then there's a line in the package insert. Nobody even knows this. You got to read this stuff. There's a line in the package insert. As a matter of fact, I have it in front of me. And I'm going to just share with your audience because I think it is so important that they know this. So my belief is that cardiovascular disease has very little to do with cholesterol and everything to do with inflammation, metabolic dysfunction, toxic exposure, stress, and so forth, but not much about cholesterol. So here's section 5.5 in the statin package insert. It's in every statin package insert. It's titled Increases in Hemoglobin A1C and Fasting Serum Glucose Levels. Those are the markers for diabetes. And it says, and I'm quoting, in some instances, these increases may exceed the threshold for the diagnosis of diabetes. Meaning, in some patients, this drug will cause patients to get diabetes. What? And it goes on and on and on. And you just read through this package insert. It's not my opinion. I'm just reading from it.
This creates Go ahead. Sorry.
My goal is I just want to educate patients. I'm not telling you that you should or shouldn't be on a statin. I just want you to know what you're getting into if you choose to do that.
You're wanting to teach. You're embodying what it means to be, docere, which is doctor in Latin, teacher. You're embodying that. And then that's why I wanted our listeners basically to, know who you are and be able to find you, which we'll talk about in just a second at the end of the podcast where they can find you. But, we have a crisis of trust. And yes, that even crisis of trust as it related to the statins predated the pandemic. But I think the pandemic really opened the eyes to the majority of the population about this crisis of trust. So how can being a Christian physician, how can that help to restore, because the way I look at it, it's speaking truth into the arena. And in that, it helps to, I think, regain trust. Because I don't know if you remember that Journal of American Medical Association online survey. It was in late 2024 showing that 40% of patients trust doctors and trust hospitals. I was shocked that it was that high, and I haven't seen any update on that. That's probably why they haven't updated it. But so that shows that we have a crisis of trust, because I don't believe that we doctors have been speaking truth into this space. And as a Christian physician, how do you think we can do that? But also, how does that correlate to medical freedom? How do those two intersect, and how can we speak truth and in that restore trust to the doctor-patient relationship? I always like to turn that around and say patient-doctor relationship.
Yeah, it's a problem. I grew up, my dad was a doctor. My older brother is a physician. He's an ophthalmologist out of Dallas. So I grew up knowing what it was like to be in a doctor's family. And back in the day when I was a little kid, I'm 63, doctors were held in very high esteem. Mm-hmm. That white coat represented something. It represented trust, humility, respect. That's not the case anymore, unfortunately. However, I think there is an awakening in the population. There is a craving for patients looking for people that believe what we believe. And I never claim to be the smartest guy in the room. I'm not. But I know that I want to partner with my patients to find the truth and bring them the best possible answer I can, including sometimes I'm wrong. I tell patients when I talk to them about statins, I said, listen, I don't want to be on a statin. I don't think I would take it. I don't believe that cholesterol is the source of cardiovascular disease. However, I may be wrong. I don't think I am, but I may be wrong. You need to do your own research. And unfortunately, if you went to 100 cardiologists, probably 95 of them would not agree with me. I'm okay with that. I don't think they're right. I think we're way over prescribing. We're way over treating. Doctors have been taught to pull out a prescription pad, not pull out a Bible. I'm not saying we should pull out a Bible with patients. I will sometimes pray with my patients and ask about their faith. Yeah. I'm quite aware that the ultimate healer is not me. that I've been given a gift to be able to help patients through their journey. And at the end of the day, we're here for about 15 minutes. We all have the same fate. We are all going to die one day, no matter what. Even if, what's that guy's name? Don't die guy, Brian Johnson. No matter what he says, we're all going to die. Yeah. So my goal here is to, and I've come around to this over the last few years, my goal in helping people get healthy is not for the sake of health. I want people to be healthy. It's no fun being sick. I've been sick myself. I've been a patient before. I've had surgery myself. It's no damn fun. My goal, though, is not to get them healthy for the sake of health. It's to get them healthy so they can serve whatever God's purpose is in their life. That's what I want for my patients. And so when I look through that lens, which I try to do, and I do so very imperfectly, but I try to do, is help patients to achieve that goal, not just the goal of health. Not all my patients are believers, and I try to be very careful. I don't want to be preachy. I don't want them not to come to me because of my own belief system. But I also know that, it took many, many years for me to come to a belief system that I have. And there were endless number of people that planted seeds in my life. A pastor who would write a little biblical passage. I had a friend who gave me a Bible with my name on it. I was still a Jew at the time. I still am a Jew, by the way. Yes, I view myself as a Jewish Christian. They gave me a Bible and it said Jeff Barke, MD on it. I'm like, who doesn't like to see their name? I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Well, at least it has the Old Testament in it too, the Hebrew Bible. And now I love that Bible and I read both sections of it. So I just want to plant seeds in my patients and friends and family and the like, and be a source of wisdom and guidance. And you and I need to be careful. And I know this is a very high bar for us. If I publicly state that I'm a Christian, then I also have to be very, very careful about how I run my personal life and how I comport myself. Because like you, I'm in the public eye. I don't seek public attention. I don't seek fame. I don't want to be recognized, although sometimes I am. People I don't know will come up to me at a mall or a restaurant and say, hey, aren't you that RX for Liberty guy? So I want to try to live and walk the walk that I preach. I do so imperfectly, but I certainly try to do that as best I can.
Yeah, you have to approach that humbly. You have to speak hope into fear. You have to teach as you so eloquently have done. You have to build trust by speaking truth. So where we are today, I think is clearly very different. We'll start wrapping this up because I know you got patients, I got patients here, because obviously we are physicians and taking care of patients. I don't know about you, Dr. Barke, but I absolutely love talking to patients, listening to patients, and helping patients. It is the greatest honor to serve patients. It's just, I can't.
It is the greatest joy of my life. People ask me, hey, when are you going to retire? When are you going to retire? I go, retire and do what? Yeah. Play golf every day? What exactly? No, this is the joy of my life and one of the purposes of my life, to impact as many people as I can. I love doing what I do. I look forward to coming to work in the morning, and interacting with patients. I don't know what that means to retire. Maybe work a little less, maybe travel a little more. But I love what I do, and I'm honored to have the opportunity, and I'm grateful that God gave me this opportunity to do what I do.
How do we take the changes that RFK is making? Back when RFK was going through the confirmation process and the absolute childish behavior, I feel like there needs to be a principle in something at Congress, because you have a bunch of just rowdy children that have no idea what they do. It's like I just keep waiting when some of these hearings for a bell to ring and the principal to walk in and say, okay, you're going into timeout, you're going into detention, right? Because we're dealing with a bunch of children in Congress. I used to think that the smartest of people went to Washington. Now I know that is not the case. That doesn't mean there aren't brilliant people there. But RFK is a disruptor. And when he was going through that process, Dr. Barke, I said, we need to understand he has 4 years, 4 to 40, to transform. How do we, as Christian physicians, how do we ensure that medical freedom is something that is not just going to be now, but it's going to be something that will be sustained for the future? Is that simply speaking truth, no matter the consequences? What do you think? Obviously, we need to mobilize. We need to have relationships. We need to build contacts. We need to amplify voices, which is why I have you on here. What do you think we do there to ensure that the disruption that RFK is rightly bringing continues, and we basically not remake medicine, but restore medicine to its original purpose, that is to serve the patient?
Restoring, I think, is a great word. I'm not really interested in the government getting involved in medicine. I think they need to get out of medicine. I don't want them to pass laws to ban things or to do this or to do that. I want patients to have medical freedom to be able to make their own choices, whether it's using a medication like ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine that has been around for a generation, using those products off-label without government interference. That's what I hope RFK is able to accomplish. I think if he can do a couple things. One, get Congress to pass a law that says under no circumstances can anybody, any institution, corporation, even the military, force people to have treatment that they don't want, treatment or prevention. I don't think there should be any vaccine mandates of any sort. I don't think vaccine companies should have immunity from liability. I'm not anti-vax, but I am pro-informed consent. Right. And if these things are so safe and effective, why do they need liability protection? So I hope they can do that. They can remove that 1995-96 law that gave vaccine companies immunity, and that they pass a rule or a law that says you're not allowed to mandate an employer or student get a vaccine or participate in any kind of medical experiment. That was the essence of the Nuremberg Code and the Nuremberg trial, but we forgot about that. So I want medical freedom. I want a government that is less involved, not more involved in our medical lives. How do we do that? By speaking the truth without fear of consequence. And that's what a lot of us, including you, did during COVID. There were doctors that lost their license as a result. I don't know if you know Ryan Cole. He's a friend. He put his career on the line and suffered greatly as a result. Many of us did. I was lucky to not lose my license. During COVID, I ended up getting a license in Texas and Arizona and Florida just in case. I had to leave town so I could still make a living. So I think more of us have to participate in this restoration. You know, if you think about it, the Revolutionary War, only about 3% of the population participated. That's where the name the 3%ers come from. So it takes critical mass, but not as much as you think, to stand up and say no. If enough of us had said no during COVID, the government wouldn't have been able to close churches and mom and pop stores, close hospitals and doctors' offices. But not enough of us stood up and said no. I hope that changes, because I think COVID was just a test. And I think there's more of this to come. World Health Organization and United Nations, one world government, and things of that sort. I hope there's enough of us now that learned during this last pandemic that will stand up when the next one comes rolling through.
Yeah, you know, that's why I tell patients, you're the force vector of change. It's not government. It's empowering you with knowledge, wisdom from God, that when you understand as a patient how much power you actually have, not just to, ask questions from your doctor, but to ask questions of your politicians and actually demand and vote. And obviously in California, there's a little bit of a voting thing going on right now. We won't go there, but I'd love to talk to you about that sometime. But I want to touch on this as we wrap up real quick. It's really interesting. You mentioned the word ivermectin. People talk about four-letter words. That's a 4-syllable word. It doesn't matter what context you use that word in, because I've used that medicine as an off-label or repurposed medication in oncology since 2017. Its first paper that suggested it had anti-cancer properties in a proposal was in 1996. So this is not new. But there, you mentioned that as a repurposed medication in oncology. Yes, the data is all preclinical, but it's strong. There's an ongoing phase 1, phase 2 study right now, but that gets censored. Yet right now, over the last several weeks, just celebrated, and honestly, it's exciting, Ozempic, GLP-1 agonist. They're talking about its benefit to slow the progression from early stage cancer to stage 4 cancer.
Yeah, I saw that.
90% of morbidity and mortality, actually reduce the incidence of breast cancer because it's targeting immunologic, it's targeting the immune system, it's targeting metabolism, it's targeting the gut microbiome. But that's a repurposed medication.
Well, yeah, but it's a repurposed medication that pharma's making big bucks on. So of course they're going to spread that word. They will be going to the FDA to get approval to use this as a potential cancer medication because there's tremendous amounts of money. Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, they've been around since the beginning of time. There's no money for anybody to be made. Pharma won't sponsor the studies because they don't have an investment. They don't have an ROI if they show benefit. That's the problem. And there lies the corruption of medicine, that it's so driven by pharmaceutical industry profits that patients get the short stick.
So are you declaring that it's profits over patients? Because that's where I was trying to go, and you took that baton and you sprinted.
Well, listen, I'm not opposed to profits. I think a pharmaceutical, and I'm not opposed to pharma. I mean, occasionally you need drugs, you need antibiotics once in a while. I need a good orthopedic surgeon to put me back together if I hurt myself. I'm not opposed to Western medicine.
Correct.
But it shouldn't be our first instinct. Our first instinct should be, how can I heal you from things that come from God, not from man? How can I allow your immune system to function properly, to heal itself, because God created us with some incredible healing powers. Now, once in a while, we need antibiotics and various medications, etc. But that's not my first instinct anymore. I want to heal people naturally whenever possible. But that's not pharma's perspective, because they need to make a profit for their shareholders.
That's why when you're dealing with cancer, you need all hands on deck. You need all therapies involved. You need, all strategies involved. So yes, if there's large tumor burden, you got chemotherapy to reduce it. Do you want that? No. Okay, it compromises the immune system. What can we do to counter that? Can we do a lower dose of chemo? Can we add in medicinal mushrooms? What can we do? Can we do a fecal transplant that helps? So all of these aspects it's not one or the other. It's
That's
integrative.
Right.
It's actually bringing these therapies, integrating them together to not just target the tumor. And of course, I'm talking about cancer because that's just what I do. But it's actually about restoring the whole of the individual. We have to be able to chew gum and walk at the same time in medicine. And you without saying it, that's what you're talking about. We have to recognize that we don't just treat disease, we're treating a person. And it's our responsibility to understand that. So, obviously we could go on and on and on. And I thank you for your time. I thank you for being courageous. My goodness. It takes courage to speak. It takes courage to put your words out there in writing, in a book, in a podcast. But Dr. Barke, it takes greater courage for you to profess why you do what you do as a Christian. So I believe that the Lord will honor you for that. And I believe he will basically use you to heal so many people, whether that be physical or whether that be through him spiritually. So I thank you for the work that you've done. How can our listeners, how can our followers find you and find out more information about you? Because you are quite literally all over the place.
Well, thank you. Social media, RX for Liberty, Instagram, Facebook, I'm on X, etc. And then website, same name, RX for Liberty. I recently started branding myself as America's Real Doctor, and I don't mean to imply that I myself am America's doctor. But what I'm trying to get at is I want to restore what American doctors used to be: a trusted source of information, a respected professional. Unfortunately, we have fallen, and it's time that we restore our position in society as healers and providers of care and information to our patients.
Wow. Well said. Well said. Well, thank you for joining me on this podcast, Doctor. Now, I keep calling you Dr. Barke. Is it Bark or Barke, Jeffrey?
Barke.
Okay.
A generation ago, it used to be Barkashenkov, and then it was shortened to Barke.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
So I look forward to having you on my podcast. I'll connect with your daughter, I know, who helps you on social and so forth, and look forward to having you on Informed Dissent.
Oh man, that will be fun because I love to go into that space. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Barke. So I'm Dr. Nathan Goodyear. This is the Prescribed by Dr. Nathan Goodyear podcast. We really need your help. We don't do ad buys. We want real relationships, real context, real followers. So please drop us a 5-star review, share out there, subscribe, share this content with people that you think will benefit, where we can empower others to understand their entitlement, their right to medical freedom, and their purpose in the medical field. You are what steers the future of medicine, cancer care, cardiovascular care. And it begins today, and it begins with the information that Dr. Barke and others provide for you. So thank you for joining this Prescribed by Dr. Nathan Goodyear podcast, and I'll see you on the next podcast. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Prescribed podcast. All references supporting this episode can be found on the prescribed.com website. That's pre-scribe.com. To get your next dose of medical innovation, make sure you subscribe to Prescribe. We'll see you for your next